Welcome back to the channel. I'm Mike. Cheers. And today's coffee is Black Rifles Waking the Neighbors. It's their high caffeine one, which I'm going to need a lot of caffeine because this is going to be a long one. I actually spent hours last night preparing an 8-page sermon for this one. And today's topic is slaying the giant of fear. And some of this I got from the David Jeremiah sermon. A lot of this is my own words as well. So if this takes more than one video, I'm sorry, but I hope you do watch all of this because there's a lot of good points made here about overcoming fear in our lives. Let's get into it. Fear disregards God's plan. If you have fear, it could actually slow down your blessings from God. It could actually spit in the face of God's plans. Deuteronomy 1:19-21. Then we set out from Horeb and went through all that great and terrible wilderness which you saw on the way to the hill country of the Amorites, just as the Lord our God has commanded us. And we came to Kadesh Barnea. I said to you, you have come to the hill country of the Amorites, which the Lord our God is about to give us. See, the Lord your God has placed the land before you. Go up, take possession, and the Lord the God of your fathers has spoken to you. Do not fear or be dismayed. So right here, God is telling us, telling them not to fear, not to let that fear control them, and not to let what you see control you, but to let faith take over that fear. Do not fear God's plan for your life. Don't hold back God's blessings. When we let fear control us, we're holding back those blessings. And I'm not saying that every fear is bad. We all have things we're afraid of. A fear of heights, a fear of spiders, snakes, things like that. I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. But the fear God is talking about is when He gives you the promise that He will see you through something, but you let your own vision, your own sight control God's promise, and you let fear interfere with what He has promised you. Like the Israelites, they saw the giants, and they're like, no, we can't do this. We're not big enough, we're not strong enough. And they did not trust God's word, even though, if you know the whole story of the Israelites, He led them from Egypt out of slavery. He protected them as the Egyptians were chasing them through the desert. And when it came to needing food and water, he provided that. But they let their fear let them forget that. Deuteronomy 1:27 and 28. And you grumbled in your tents and said, because the Lord hates us, he has brought us out of the land of Egypt to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites to destroy us. Where can we go up? Our brethren have made our hearts melt, saying, the people are bigger and taller than we. The cities are larger and fortified to heaven. And besides, we saw the sons of the Anakim. And if you don't know what Anakim is, it's giants. Anakim is a word that means giant. The Anakim there. Fear can turn one giant and cause you to see an army of giants. So when we see that one giant, our brains, they see a lot more. They see a whole army of them, even if there's just one or two. Fear can affect the people around you, not just you. If, kind of like with the Israelites here, when the spies came back, all but 2, when 8 of the 10 spies came back, they made everyone see that whole army of giants, even though they didn't see them, because they saw them up here. And they started getting the fear right here. So your fear, it can affect others. 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of sound mind. God did not create us to be creatures of fear. He made us to be creatures of faith, to trust Him with every part of our lives. So when God gives a promise, when He promised them that land was theirs, and they kept showing fear, they affected the minds of many of the others. Fear distorts God's purposes. Fear discourages God's people. And fear is very much infectious. As you learn here in the story of them going through the desert and then finding the promised land. And fear causes us to disbelieve God's promises. Fear, this kind of fear, when it comes against God, it comes from the devil himself. It's one of his lies. Deuteronomy 1:29 to 33. Then I said to you, do not be shocked or fear them. The Lord your God who goes before you will himself fight on your behalf, just as he did for you in Egypt before your eyes, in the wilderness where you saw how the Lord your God carried you, just as a man carries his son in all the way which you have walked until you came to this place. But for all this you did not trust the Lord your God, who goes before you on your way to seek out a place for you to encamp, in the fire by night and cloud by day, to show you the way in which you should go. See, and we're all guilty of this still to this day. We will see what God has done for us. But as our lives go on, it's like our brains want to forget all that God has done, all the promises He kept throughout our lives when we're facing new trials. So it's like we're starting new in faith about every time whenever we forget what God has done for us, like the Israelites have here. God is with you through all you experience in your life. Fear disobeys God's principles. If you let fear overcome you, then the teachings we learn from God, the principles He tries to instill in us, we're pretty much throwing that out because we're letting fear overtake us and forgetting all that God done. Deuteronomy 1:26, yet you were willing to go, but rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. Fear is disobedience. When we let fear control us, we are disobeying God. Now, like I said, if it's like a fear of heights or spiders or something like that, those are common fears. Or the fear of the Lord Himself, like we fear our parents' punishments. Those I don't see as bad. In fact, the last one I see as a healthy fear, because we are to fear the Lord as our Father, because we know He holds the key to judgment. But the fear that they're showing through their complaints, and we're all guilty of it still to this day, is that we're forgetting all that God has done for us. We're spitting pretty much in God's face every time we let the deceptions of the devil control us with that fear. James 4:17, to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. So whenever we know that we need to overcome that fear and trust God, we're disobeying God. And it says here in James 4:17 that we're sinning. And it is a sin when we disobey God. Being disobedient to God is a sin. Alone, we can't overcome our fears. And that is very true. We are weak-minded creations without God. But God gave us the Spirit God gave us the spirit of courage. Trust in God and He will make you courageous. And courageous don't mean fearless. Courage comes from looking at your fears, overcoming them while still being afraid. But you still stand up to it. If you allow fear to dominate your life, it will destroy every perfect plan God has in store for you. Fear is a powerful force, but God is more powerful than all your fears. Fear demands a biblical response. We need to confront our fears honestly. We need to confess our fears as sin. And it looks like we're at a stopping point in the first part of this. So I hope you continue on in part 2. I love you all. Stay blessed, stay caffeinated, and see you in the second part.